Good morning, everybody. Today I am hiking up at about 11,000 feet. It is about 5:30 in the morning. It's just a little after sunrise. And you have to pardon me if I'm breathing a little hard. I've already climbed about 500 vertical feet, and I've got another, 1,500 or so before the top of the trail I'm up to. I head back to Alaska in a few days, and am wanting to get into, my beloved high country of the Rockies. This was the area that got me interested in the outdoors and photography. Anyway, for today's 5 minutes of photography, we are going to dive headfirst into the complicated and beautiful world of composition. So, as we go through the hike today, I will be stopping and talking a little bit about composition and specifically landscape composition. And yeah, that's what we're going to cover today. So thanks for joining me again, and I got to get back to climbing this hill. Well, as you can see, I have reached the Alpine here. It's taken me about 2 hours of hiking to go. I'm up about 4.5 miles, something like that, to this point. And now that it's starting to get more open, you can see behind me, obviously there's a much more of a view than there was down in the trees, which opens up the opportunity to talk about what I wanted to talk about today with you guys. And that is landscape composition. And of course, you can make landscape images, as we talked about a couple of episodes ago, with just about any focal length you want. I mean, you can do it. You can create landscape images anywhere. But every different focal length is going to require a slightly different strategy. And specifically, what I want to talk about today is wide-angle photography. Now, using wide angles is tricky because so much appears in the frame. And if you're not paying attention to your composition, you are more than likely going to end up with stuff in there you don't want or need. And it's distracting in the image. And so you really have to be very careful with wide angles. Yes, it makes it look cool. Yes, you get big skies and dramatic perspectives, but a lot of stuff can go wrong with a wide angle. So I like to think about wide angle images as walking a trail. So right behind me there, you can see the trail I've been following. And I like to think of my photography as that. So I'm thinking first about how I'm entering the scene. So my first step, and that's your strong foreground element, something that is going to grab your viewer's attention and lead them deeper into the frame. And then you have your middle ground, and your middle ground needs to be your next destination. So you glance down at your feet when you're walking, and then you look up and look to that next few steps away, or the next 50 or 100 yards away. And that's kind of the next step into your frame. And then finally you have the background, or the distant mountains in this case. And that provides you your ultimate destination, the place you want to go. But you need a clear path following you through that. And that almost always involves a strong foreground element, some kind of middle ground that doesn't necessarily need to be important, but interesting is good. And then a strong background, something that makes your viewer want to dive deeper into your frame. Just like here, I can't wait to dive deeper into those mountains. Another thing I want to make sure that you're considering when you're making any landscape image, but particularly wide angles, is your depth of field. So remember about your aperture. That will control how much of your image is in focus from front to back. And that can make a huge difference on your photos. So on these images of flowers I've been taking, on images that I want the flower to be the dominant subject and I really want that to stand out, I've been using an open aperture that separates it well from those background elements, those mountains and the other areas of the meadows. But on images where I want to make sure I'm incorporating the background and making that a more important aspect of the image, for those I'm using a much smaller aperture. So don't forget that aspect of wide angle landscape photography. It makes an enormous difference. You can see in those images of the flowers that I was really going for a powerful foreground, because I had mentioned that I'd lost some of that light. There's nice even light on the flowers and on the foreground objects, but the mountains themselves, they look a little bland because there's not too much directional light on them. But using the flowers as a powerful foreground can create a more compelling image out of the scene that may not quite be as ideal as I might have liked when I headed up here this morning. But that's the way it goes. But anyway, that's the idea. Powerful foreground, moderate ground that, is nice to have something interesting in it or something to guide your eyes further into the frame. And then a goal, a destination deeper into the image. And that's the idea of how I look and how I approach a lot of my wide angle landscape photography. So thanks for joining me again for another 5 minutes of photography. As always, check me out on Facebook, subscribe to this feed, and enjoy your photography. Share with me what you get.